The original plan was to walk all the way from Norwich to Lakenheath. We decided that that was a bad idea because it's far too dangerous, particularly on the roads between Wymondham and Thetford, and then again from Thetford to Lakenheath. So the plan became one of going to different places. We could have abandoned and just said we'll start at Lakenheath, but now we decided that it was worth being in Norwich and going to Wymondham. There was a good path and a good reason. And also in Thetford, we decided there was a good reason, if not a good path. So Kett in Wymondham and Paine here. And I want to make the connections with how these two are connected and how Paine in particular is connected to the East Anglian bomber planes in the last World War. It's a rather strange story. Paine was born here, educated here, but didn't spend that much of his life here. He was all over the place, France and America particularly. His connection with Kett, the first one for me, is both were condemned to execution. Kett had it, I'm afraid. It was appalling. Something else happened to Paine. In France, he was in the French Revolution, Robespierre was in power, and Paine was condemned to execution. And the tradition there in the prison was that whoever was condemned to be executed the following day, the jailers would come round and put a mark on the door. For Paine's extraordinarily good fortune, the door was open when the man came round putting the marks on, so when the door was shut, there was no mark to be seen, and he wasn't executed that day. And even more lucky, Robespierre fell very soon afterwards, so he managed to get away completely. It is an amazing bit of luck for him. The other thing that they have in common is they were both very interested in land ownership and land use. Kett, it isn't often said, I think, known, was actually a landowner, not a peasant. The peasants came to him to complain, and they heard their story and agreed with them, and they decided that they could use him to lead the whole rebellion that he conducted then between Wymondham and then on Mousehold Heath in Norwich. Paine's view of land was a complicated one. I need to read a little bit of from his book, Common Sense, but the particular pamphlet on agrarian justice. Cultivation is at least one of the greatest natural improvements ever made by human invention. It has given to created earth a tenfold value, but the landed monopoly that began with it has produced the greatest evil. It has dispossessed more than half the inhabitants of every nation of their natural inheritance without providing for them as ought to have been done. An indemnification for that loss, and has thereby created a species of poverty and wretchedness that did not exist before. The parallel with Kett is fairly obvious, I think. He went on to argue quite astonishingly that he agreed with land ownership. He thought private ownership of land was perfectly sensible to ensure efficient cultivation, but he thought the landowners should pay a tax, and the tax should be used to fund a universal wage. He didn't get very far with that idea, but he's the person I know who advocated a universal wage for everyone. That was when he was in America. The connection with American bases with Paine is more curious. East Anglia was a place where there's an awful lot of bases in World War II. It was the best way nearest way of getting bombers across to Europe and Germany. There were lots of bases, and they were taking US squadrons. Lakenheath, however, was not one of them taking US squadrons. It had existed in the First World War with the Royal Flying Corps, and in the beginning of the Second World War in 1940, it was decided to expand it, improve the runways, huge long tarmac runways, especially for bombers, but not to actually use it. It was as a decoy. It was, amazingly, a deliberate target intended to attract German bombers so that they would bomb an unused airfield rather than the Mildenhall nearby and others around. So it's a real weird irony that we are now complaining about Lakenheath becoming used as a target, if you like, becoming a target, whereas that's how it started in World War II. It was quickly taken over by the RAF and putting planes on it, but it wasn't until '48 that American planes arrived, as I understand it, in Lakenheath itself. The connection with Paine in particular is that some of the bomber pilots were actually fans of Paine, great admirers, and called their planes after Paine and so on. It's quite an extraordinary piece of history. And they were incensed that Thetford was so backward as to not have a statue to him. So when they got, the ones I've heard about were in California. This comes from New York, the Paine Society, but it started, I think, from going back to California and complaining bitterly, writing to Thetford Council and say, for God's sake, get yourself a statue. It took until 1964, and Charles Wheeler, the president of the RA, produced this particular statue. So it's been around a good long time already, 60 years. And I don't know if you noticed, but the stone at the back is weathering very badly. Some of the writing is totally illegible. So that's basically the Paine connection with these things. And I think it's about all I need to say. What I was going to say to finish is one of the most memorable lines from Paine. These are the times that try men's souls. He didn't talk about women ever, it was men's souls he said, but I would please women as well. And that's why we're here, seeking inspiration today from Paine and yesterday from Kett. Thank you.